Yes, we can start. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'll pull the agenda up. Do you have the agenda printed or should I pull it up?
I have it printed if you want to look at it. Should have brought other copies.
That's okay, I'll just. All right, so, we had a Board of Health meeting last week. I know when we had met with you guys, we had talked about whether or not Buchanan County was interested in subcontracting. And they are interested in mentoring and helping in any way that they can, but not interested in fully subcontracting. They don't have the capacity to take on the entirety of our essential Board of Health functions. So we spent our last meeting really diving into the structure of the Board of Health. And I printed out a couple options here that we kind of looked through. So let me pass these out. So the first one here is what.
Thank you.
Yep. And I apologize for writing and not doing it on the computer, but it was
Probably easier.
It was easier to grab a piece of paper. So this is what we currently basically have. So as of right now, we have, with looking at doing county-based, we would be looking at hiring a public health administrator who would oversee any public health staff. But the other administrator does double time, does both duties with land use and environmental health. So in this current structure, we would have 2 administrators for public health, for health. One would be doing part-time land use, which is what we have right now, and then we would be looking to hire a public health administrator. So you can see there's like 3 buckets of staff underneath in the green, and 2 administrators. So that's currently what kind of the status quo would be with us just looking to hire a public health administrator. This setup was created back in the 90s, is my understanding, when Virginia Gay took over public health. So the disadvantage we see to this is that we are both, the supervisors and the Board of Health, overseeing this one administrator, which is what we've been doing, and the budget ends up, half of the money comes from one bucket, half comes from another, and we end up with 2 administrators that we're overseeing. So the other option that we entertained was instead dividing it as 2 administrators still.
Thank you.
Yep. So we still have 2 administrators, we still have 3 buckets of staff, but it's divided differently. So land use becomes its own administrator, and then we have a health administrator who oversees both the environmental health staff and the public health staff. In this setup, we really see 3 as being the ideal department size at the beginning for public health, environmental health. So that gives us 3 staff. The health administrator could have a public health background or an environmental health background. And then there would be staff underneath that would be doing a lot of the day-to-day work. We kind of weigh the pros and cons, you know, looking for someone who has knowledge in both public health and environmental health is probably easier long-term than looking for someone with experience with environmental health and zoning. Those are kind of 2 different degrees. And so by combining a health administrator role, we think that might be easier long-term to find someone that could fill both of those roles. We discussed this over an hour. And our unanimous recommendation was to proceed with the second that I handed out, with having the Board of Health oversee 1 administrator and handing over zoning, that administrator completely to the supervisors. This makes a difference for what job description we pick and how we structure our department. And ultimately, the budgets would need to be separated out in such a way to allow for this. But we feel this is the better way to have a strong public health department is to proceed with this type of structure. So that's where we're sitting. Our next steps is we need to, once we get the structure, we need to approve a job description and salary. We created a subcommittee to hopefully work with you guys to figure out salary, all that kind of stuff. But we need blessing on structure before we can go any further. Anything to add from the other public health board members?
I'll just add that from Becky, our public health representative or whatever she is, and from the research we've done and people we've talked to, the number 1 thing that it sounds like was regretted with counties who have moved to county-based systems from hospital-based systems is not bringing environmental health fully under them is not combining environmental health and public health in their own departments. It sounds like that's been one of the most regretted things that's happened moving forward, and them looking back on how they have restructured moving from a hospital-based system.
And this is the structure that our county had, from my understanding, prior to Virginia Gay. So this would be a return to the structure we had when we were a county-based department.
No. Environmental health was always, they were together,
Okay.
they were separate.
Separate, okay, separate budgets, okay,
They were separate.
okay.
Separate from public health.
Correct.
There was
It
like 3
environmental
administrators.
health. No, we had Nancy Farmer as the public health administrator, Mark Greenlee as the environmental health administrator. Then they both answered to the Board of Health.
Okay, but then there was a land use administrator as well.
Mark doubled as the land use
Okay.
administrator.
Okay,
That was in the 90s when that started.
No, that was in the 80s.
From a budget standpoint, in talking with Haley and Caitlin this morning, our public health, our budget is going to be able to support 1 salary, 1 employee, 1 addition. If land use and environmental health stays together, and we have those 2 budgets and we control part of that, then we could support an employee under those 2 budgets. But our budget alone will only support 1 addition.
I think I included you on what I shared with them too,
this morning?
right? No, it was Friday, wasn't it, that I said?
Friday, yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
That's kind of what we dove into a little more today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we delved into how it was broken up too, salary-wise. between land use and environmental health for each Barb, Mark, and Matt. What percentage
Okay.
came out of each budget. So,
And explain to them how we divvy that out per what services you do from one versus the other. And that has fluctuated in the past by percentages a little bit here and there.
What's your feelings, Barb?
Our department wants to remain outside of public health. Public health can stand alone with their administrator and staff that they need. Matt and I will continue as environmental health and land use. Because of the structure, the way it is, how we've got everything set up, it runs smoothly for the county.
You're back to example one,
one, yeah.
That is correct.
where they recommended example two.
Correct.
Okay.
So the new person would actually only be in charge of the public health.
They would be paid administrator. And they would be the administrator of public health.
And under your recommendation, exhibit 2, you'd still just have one person.
Correct.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether it's one way or the other, exhibit 1 or 2, still just one person.
Yep. Under exhibit 2,
They would handle both public and environmental.
under exhibit 2, you would have an administrator, and then you would have a public health staff and an environmental health staff. So you would be a department of 3.
Oh.
Which would also provide some continuity, so say that we just take Virginia Gay out of the equation,
Okay.
which is example 1 essentially, and now Katie, for example, is reporting directly to us, and let's use Barb and Matt for example. So we'll say that Matt is the boss, right, he's the administrator, Katie wants to take leave as public health director, there's now Barb and Matt to take calls, start investigations, until Katie would get back from leave, essentially, or vice versa. They would all be able to cross-train a little bit in environmental health and public health, and then they would actually be able to do, so again, put Barb as the environmental health staff and Katie as the public health staff, they would be able to focus almost solely on those efforts and not worry about any of the administrative stuff, like billing time every 15 minutes, because Matt would be doing all of the administrative stuff, just for example, using those 3.
The 3 existing employees we have.
Removing
Matt,
Virginia Gay. They would
Matt,
be-
Barb, Katie.
Right, they would be able to solely focus, whoever was in those roles, would be focusing day to day on public health efforts, not necessarily worrying about administrative stuff for half their time, for example.
But you're dumping more responsibility on the 2 right now, right? This way.
Option 1 or 2, I should have labeled them.
Option 2.
Option 2,
We would be utilizing them. If we go with option 1, we have only in our budget enough money to hire one person. That means that public health person would be,
cross out public health staff, that green, then all we have is a public health administrator with no
That's it.
staff underneath
Correct.
them.
Essentially Katie without Amanda and everybody else that works in her office with her now.
and we can't, I don't believe we can offer the public health services we need to with hiring one staff.
Katie feels like it takes 1.5 to do that job justice.
Public health.
There's a lot, they have a very stringent way they have to do administrative things in order to get all that money we get from the state. It's real pain, to be honest with you.
Time invested.
Both ways the county's paying 2 administrators is just, how do we structure, with option 1, that land use / environmental health administrator, their salary is set by 2 different boards. Their job review is set by 2 different boards. How we hire or replace that person is a joint decision. It makes for a lot of joint meetings and joint efforts. With option 2, you guys have full control over land use administrator, and we have full control essentially over who we hire and review for health administrator and the budget. With option 1, as far as the budget partially coming out of environmental health and partially coming out of land use, my understanding is we haven't had a lot of time studies. So is the breakdown of what environmental health is kicking in for that salary representative of how much time that person's spending on environmental health? Is one department subsidizing? That would be a question we would have moving forward, is if we're kicking in 60%, environmental health is kicking in 60% of the budget, are we getting 60% of the work? It's a lot cleaner to go with option 2.
I'm sure it's not this simple, but Haley, maybe you can help. Maybe you guys already discussed this in the budget, but it sounds like between the 3 of them, there was a lot of halftime that could have equaled 1 full-time environmental person, 1 full-time land use person.
That's not true.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that,
No.
'cause they do the work, I don't
No,
know.
that
So the
wouldn't be true.
breakdown in salary, if we wanna go that way, Mark was 52 environmental health, 48 land use, Matt is 50-50, and Barb was 58 environmental health and 42 land use.
Okay.
And that
So that's how they
fluctuates.
broke, but yes, it did fluctuate. But
Depending on
yes,
what we do.
we would have 1 FTE. What did we figure, 1.6?
Yeah, I think she said 1.5 or something, 1.6 is
Was what we had. So we have 0.52 FTE vacant.
So with option 2, which is land use administrator, we'd have 2 people under that heading, isn't that correct?
Land use environmental health administrator, then we have land use staff.
Well, that's over here, option 1.
Yeah, I'm not-
Option 2, where they're separated,
Oh,
okay? You'd still need 2 people in land use, correct?
sure.
Yes or no?
Well, you would,
I think so.
absolutely.
From what I've seen, you would need
You
2
would need
people.
2 people in environmental health, and most likely, and I don't know all about public health, but I'm assuming that you need a public health administrator, and I would assume at least a half-time, if not a full-time employee to help that person.
So how did all this work get done before?
We had Virginia Gay Hospital in the middle.
They subsidize
They
that
did the
part.
public health
Well, we
part.
weren't paying them really, were we?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
were.
were.
Yes.
Through grants and.
They got 90,000 a year from you guys, and 62,000 a year from the state, plus whatever other grants they could get. So they will continue to do that. Frankly, they were doing all of the essential functions, but when we look at what can be done in a county our size, there wasn't as much public health, other outreach efforts that were being done. So,
I just want to clarify with staffing. With 2 public health and 2 administrators, and with option 2, these 3 would be full-time. So Katie specifically said that she thinks time and a half. That's with everything she's doing, billing, public health, that's the whole works. That would kind of be the point, 1 full-time public health staff to do public health. Then this administrator, half-time administrative public health, half-time administrative environmental health. So each essentially would have a time and a half position between 3 full-time people.
Really? Okay, because, Maggie said health administrator, option 2 would need 3 people.
so one
Right.
person's the administrator.
Right.
One person's a staff,
Right.
another person's a staff.
Right.
So that's 3.
Okay, yeah.
And then the
Where
administrator.
you're talking 1.5 and 1.5,
So,
that was
so
2.
that's 1.5, 1.5,
Cause they're
one
doing the
and a half.
administrative.
Okay, I get it that way then, okay. I was taking it as 1.5
Oh, no.
and 1.5.
no,
And maybe in the future, we're not saying that this is not gonna be without bumps and stuff like that. And maybe we begin doing so much public health that we do need to build our public health department. We have no idea what this could look like in a year or 5 years because we haven't been doing the amount of public health that we foresee possible to do in our county. So do we need to hire another half-time person in 2 years? We have no idea what that, but that would be a good thing if that's something we needed to do.
and there might be more grants available to subsidize that salary. It may not even, another half-time position may not come out of the county's coffers, but if we can do more grant work, we can get more money from the state. So, there's a vaccine grant, there's, could we take back some emergency preparedness? I mean, there's more options.
Their
can't-
focus over the last, I don't know how many years, has just been home health.
Sure,
And so.
I get that.
And essential public health functions.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this was gonna be tricky with budgets and staffing and everything, and we're not saying that we don't understand that. But we're not looking at today necessarily, we're looking at the future, just as they were, back in 1990, and that worked for a long time, it did. But moving forward, and we have a very engaged and active board. I don't know what the board has been like in the past, if it's been as engaged and active, but we have a lot of intelligent people. We just got somebody very knowledgeable who, from Blackhawk County, who does this on a much larger scale. And so we have a very engaged, active board with very knowledgeable people, and we've spent hours, several hours discussing this. And we investigated every option, we didn't just jump to any conclusion, we've done a lot of due diligence to come to this recommendation.
We realize that this would also result in having to redo budgets at this point in the game. I mean, unfortunately, things changed after budgets were submitted, Virginia Gay terminated the contract. So, that's not lost on us, that this is work for everyone involved.
So if you throw the two together, environmental health and public health,
Which is how we have it currently.
No,
No, we
he's
do
saying option 2.
Oh, option 2?
option 2, if you throw them two together,
Okay,
that goes back to your 3 people
3
again.
people.
You got 2 right now in land use, and I wanna keep them
We had essentially we had 3 staff members who were doing
1.6 FTEs.
1.6 FTEs.
So you really have 1.5 people.
On land,
Out of our,
Use.
out of.
Our budget, but what the time was, we didn't have a time study, so we don't know. Cause we had Mark, Matt, and Barb.
but I'm still trying to get this through my head. We leave them 2 in land use. That's all they're gonna do, is land use. And then the new 3 people will have to deal with public health and environment.
And I guess the question would be, if we went with option 2,
That's what option 2 is.
yep,
Then you
would Matt, would someone that is doing, either Barb or Matt, that's doing both land use and environmental, and land use and environmental.
No, I'm splitting them up, just like you
Right,
did on
right,
paper.
but let me finish. Would Barb or Matt be interested in going over to be the health administrator? Because they're doing, this person could have an environmental health background.
The answer is no. Matt does not want to, nor do I.
go to the health staff.
We want public health to remain public health, get their own identity and get their own staff.
Okay,
And you
but
want
that, but
option
you
one
want
is
option
what
one,
you're
but
telling
what
me.
I'm saying is if we go with option two, it would be open for, that person could have either a public health or environmental health background. That person would not necessarily have to have one or the other.
And so we may need to hire 2 people for option 2. We may not need to hire them right now, maybe 1. We understand the first year, we're probably not gonna be jumping into the public like we want to do, we get that. So maybe next year we have to hire our second one. And then, we understand it may be a couple of years before we're fully up and running. We're not expecting July 2, we're 3 fully staffed people doing all the great things we wanna do in the world. We're not that naive.
So what I'm hearing though, just to be clear, is Barb and Matt would prefer to go over to be land use administrator and one of them be the land use staff.
If we
And
went with
we would
option
be-
two.
And we would be looking at hiring, the Board of Health then would be looking at hiring somebody to do the environmental health stuff. And we would be looking at hiring a health administrator. Is that what I'm hearing,
That's,
Barb?
No. Matt and I want to stay as environmental health and land use.
so Barb, but listen, if we went with option two, where do you see yourselves in this diagram?
Environmental health and land use.
Barb,
2 people.
okay, but your option two, where are you in this, not, that's option two.
Land use is split in option 2.
Where do you see yourselves?
Would either of you like to be the administrator, or would you both want to remain separated in land use?
Haley, am I correct with the land use budget, that cannot support 2 full-time people in itself, correct?
And that in
Correct.
itself, because it was split out.
It was a 1 point,
Yeah,
correct, it's a,
it was still split between the funds.
So the public health budget can only support a public health administrator and possibly a half-time person.
Because we have like
$83,000 in that.
I don't think we would support a full-time person and a half-time person just off of our budget.
No, because you wouldn't leave room for education,
Correct.
training, or any of that. You have
We
to
would
have
only
cushion.
support a full-time person.
And the environmental health budget is 260,000, so all totaled,
No, it's not.
235,
No.
235?
235.
Our
We
environment, yeah,
But,
it's
so what we
170 and 42 in general sup, correct?
What we figured this morning is if environmental health and land use stayed together and those budgets stayed how they are, split, and we kept control, we each kept control, dual control, it would support to hire possibly 1 FTE
For public health. So,
with our environmental health and the land use budget.
so option one, we cross this off, we hire one person.
Correct.
Right. Option two, I guess, my question is, especially for Matt and Barb, the Board of Health voted to go with option two. We realize that that takes restructuring. But if option two happened, Matt and Barb, where do you see yourselves in this diagram?
Resigning, both of us.
Option, really? On option 2?
We don't want that structure.
If there's any splitting, Haley, are those reapplying for both positions if it's not a joint position anymore?
That
Do you
I
have
wouldn't
any
have
idea?
control, because that would be with her job description she was talking about. That's where you need structure today, currently, right, to get moving forward, but I've
You would apply
explained
for
like
health
the budget and what rural services levied, what that money can be utilized versus the other funds and all that, so.
So Barb says that she would resign, Matt?
I mean, depending what the jobs are, I guess that'd be the thing that need to be figured out. And I mean, if board's saying you want 2 people in land use, that wouldn't be supported with a split budget.
No. It has to remain with environmental, health, and land use. And Matt has been willing to step up.
It does, it does, but then public health only ends up with one staff person. So either way, one department's shorted a half of what they need. Cause
Okay,
without,
do we have the,
Because you said you had enough to pay one
She-
public health
She was looking at the
administrator.
3 splits.
And then what, a half-time person is what you came up with this morning, Lisa?
we would, our budget, public health budget can support hiring one.
No half-time then, because you have
Well, we
that.
looked at the 108, we just put
Threw
a
it
rough
in there.
example, chose $65,000 salary, what it would
Yeah,
cost
so
for
if we
everything.
were, right now, Caitlin they've had an entry-level RN position open for almost a year with their public health. It comes in at $32 an hour, which their budget-wise total with IPERS and all that is $100,000, for that position. Like I said, that's, an under market, $30.32 per hour was under market, and like she said, it's been open for a year. She gave us a community health manager, which would be a little bit similar to administrator. It paying $35 per hour, budget that comes at $113,200. So that's for the administrator.
I would.
With our budget being 183. There's no way we could support a 1.5.
Virginia Gay was paying significantly less than that to their public health director.
Significantly less.
Significantly.
Because their budget was supported by the home health part probably too. So they were able to dual budget them. So they could pay a lot less.
No, but that person's take-home pay was significantly less. And they are, I think in our county, there's a fair number of, Virginia Gay is not the highest payer for nurses in the area, and there's people who don't want to commute. And I'm not convinced that we couldn't find somebody that would be interested in this role. And it would be a raise to take a role like this.
I don't understand how we can expect an increase in the workload at your office when you're already short a person. Or just that ain't gonna work.
We need to hire people. We're down Mark and we're down a public health director. So we have,
We have money in our budget, Maggie, to elevate somebody and hire somebody in our budget. The public health budget does not.
that's if we stick with option 1 and keep those budgets separate,
That's right.
which is, again,
So does a public health person, they need help? Is that what you're saying?
they need a 1.5 as well. So
So you need how much money to get an extra half person in that position? What are you thinking? Based on the $183,000. So if you're taking.
So we were assuming, because you guys are already half-time you are both already let's say half-time in environmental health. Let's say that we kept both of you under the health administrator, then no, we only have one position because we have you two, let's say. And the budget's already supporting that.
Creating one FTE in environmental health. Is that what you're saying? The two half-time?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
and they're dual role.
Right.
But that's not a given on any given day. You can't just say that it's.
Neither for public health, I mean,
Yeah.
because when they're very busy sometimes doing vaccine audits or there's a disease outbreak, I mean, these things ebb and flow, and with option 2, we build in times where that health administrator may be doing 100% of their time helping the environmental health staff, and there might be other times where they end up helping public health staff, so it builds in that redundancy. Either way, we as a county have 2 administrators overseeing 3 departments. It's just which 2 go together.
And with option 2, if we stay with option 1 next year or 2 years, when we come back to you and we say, we need a half-time person to support public health or environmental health because they're overworked, they're really busy. It's gonna be really hard for us to, again, as it is now with all 3 departments, it's hard to say who does what where. With an option 2, when we come back to you, for example, in 2 years and say, we really need a half-time person in public health because we're really active and we're busy, we'll be able to show you the studies, the time, where it's going, and why we need you to support another half-time person, for example.
And with option 1, in that same situation, maybe we need another person because they're doing all their time, they're pulled over to land use all the time. So we will need, as we're actually dealing with our budget, which we haven't, because with public health, you guys wrote the check to Virginia Gay and we didn't have any control over it. We will need to see time studies to see what percentage of time is being used on land use or environmental health, so we know if we need more staff. Because if they're spending 70% of their time on land use, then maybe what we just need is more of a 50-50 split, and land use needs to hire more staff, not us hire more staff.
No. It stays the way it is. They can get a public health director and get them, if they need a full-time staff for that public health director, then I think that there should be some options for them, whether it be a budget amendment or it be getting them a budget. Ours is running fine. There's no need.
Respectfully, Barb, we were appointed to the Board of Health to weigh these options and to come up with what functioned best for health in the county. And our board spent a lot of time thoughtfully thinking through this. And so you can say that it is your opinion that you would like it that way, but to say it stays this way, I feel is misguided. So ultimately, you guys control the money in the budget. You have to decide, but
On the public health part of it, whoever you're gonna hire for that, they're gonna need a vehicle, ain't they?
or mileage paid.
So that's gonna cut into your $183,000.
Correct, that's why we can only support
One
one
employee.
employee.
That's what we said, like, we'd have to amend, it was explaining to them, we've amended in September, as early as September before, but, because we do have a cushion when we started the budget, but not, we'd still need to get that structure, and know what line items we need to build going forward too.
I don't understand. How come we need a car now when we didn't need a car before?
Virginia
Because we
Gay.
had Virginia Gay.
They were our public health, remember?
And
we
we've got
subcontracted.
automobiles. There's 4 of them sitting in a parking lot. So, you know.
We never saw breakdowns of funds from Virginia Gay. They didn't really keep a budget in the same way that the county does. The money was handed over and they spent it on what they needed to spend it on.
And they were provided a lot of resources from Virginia Gay Hospital, resources that we now have to assume.
I need to ask, who are you?
Oh, I'm Lisa, the new board member.
Okay. Did not know.
Sorry.
Not the
This
new
is
whiz,
Deb, right?
just
She's
you
an
there.
RN, yes.
I'm
Matt, option 2, which is land use administrator only, are you willing to stay in that department?
I mean, it would depend what that final structure would look like, and that's a thing too, I guess, I don't know, as far as, there's a lot of questions I feel, and the funding I think is a big concern to me, cause I don't know. 'Cause I
Under-
believe-
Under the assumption that it's funded and that there's 2 people in the land use, is that where you're willing to stay?
I think it
I
would.
mean,
No, let him
I
answer,
just wanted
please.
you to know that
Please let him answer.
environmental health would suffer, but I didn't.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
environmental health, that's what my
It's a-
background has been in. Yeah, I've done land use now for 8 years in zoning, but, environmental health is, I'd say, is what my background is in.
So can you answer that question?
So if you got a preference, then?
I don't think I can with the information I have right now, honestly. I don't feel like I have enough information to make a decision about that at this point.
What information would you need?
Yeah.
Specifically, what duties, what staff would be under each, how that would all work out. I mean, I guess specifically, yeah, what those job descriptions would be, I guess would really be main thing as far as what duties would be outlined in each of those.
So essentially, you wanna see each job description for each administrator and then decide which one you're feeling like you wanna apply for?
I mean, I won't ever apply for a job if I didn't
Right.
see a job
Absolutely.
description.
Understood.
Yeah.
That's why I don't feel like I can give you an answer without.
But you
knowing
would
that.
stay in one or the other?
If I have to, I mean,
If we go with option 2, you would most likely apply for one.
I don't have a choice then, yeah, so I probably would, yes.
I mean, you always have a choice, like people.
Well, yes, but I mean,
You enjoy being able to do land use and environmental health right now?
yeah, I mean, with how things are set up and with the time frame we're looking at, my personal opinion is right now, I think they should remain together. If it's something in the future, budget and with more time, then yeah, it's not something I'd be opposed to as far as looking at different structure. Biggest thing is the time frame, and with the funding being set right now, those are my biggest concerns.
But there's never gonna be a good time to do this. If we don't do this now, we won't, we're not gonna do this next year or in 2 years from now.
Because we're gonna hire somebody to be a
Right.
public health administrator and then demote them to public health staff a year later when,
Right.
Can there be an administrator over top of, public health, environmental health, and land use? Essentially keeping option 1, but take off the land use environmental health administrator, put one box as an administrator over all of them.
That doesn't alleviate any of the issues that we discussed with our board though. That just reinforces all of the issues that we discussed.
I mean, because then we still have
2 budgets.
2 budgets, 2 people deciding who gets hired and fired for those roles. And
It's still murky, it's still muddy. It doesn't alleviate anything, it just, and then that's the way we'll be for, until somebody else brings this back up in 30 years or whenever, this 30 years. This isn't an easy thing to do, but this is the time, like, this really is the time if we're gonna do this to proceed.
My personal feelings, I think you need to find your public health nurse. She's gonna have to be a nurse, correct?
Not
No.
necessarily.
We
no,
can contract nursing duties.
And where does that money come from?
the budget.
Budget.
I mean, as of right now, there isn't any nursing duties that have to be done. The only thing would be is if we had like a case of tuberculosis where that person needs to be given medicine daily for 6 months by a nurse. So you hire a home health agency where that person lives, if it's in Blairstown or if it's wherever, to go administer that medication. Vaccines don't have to be given, they have to be ordered and distributed, so to vaccine partners, so the pharmacies and the clinics in the county. But this person does not have to have a nursing background. So most health administrators have a master's in public health, and they are not nurses. There's undergraduate departments, like University of Northern Iowa and Mount Mercy now have bachelor's degrees in public health. So this could be an entry-level position as well, with some mentorship from, say, Buchanan County. We don't need a nurse. A nurse would be nice, but we don't need one.
Buchanan County, that gal, is she a nurse?
She was, yeah, but she hasn't been for, well, she keeps it up, but she hasn't done nursing work for quite a while, I don't think. Maybe a little bit with public health, but she has an MPH as well. She used to do, it's been like 10 years or so since she worked in a hospital, hasn't it? It's been quite a
Yeah.
while. But yes, she used to
But
work.
she's still doing nursing
Nursing
duties there, yeah.
duties, yeah, she still is.
But she does have an MPH as well, Ty does.
And frankly, if we had a nurse, one of the biggest situations in which we would need a nurse is a communicable disease that requires daily medication administration. One nurse would not be able to support that without subcontracting that. You would not be able to expect one public health nurse staff to be able to give daily medication for 6 months with not a single day off. So we would still be looking at needing to subcontract that to an agency.
Well, guys, what's your opinions?
I think 3 of us need to get together. That's my opinion. We've been presented facts. And it's not gonna be an easy decision.
Well, myself, I'm leaning on option 1. I look at it, it's been running that way, it's been working.
I'll ask the question, then why did we ask for their recommendation?
To see what's out there. This is more their field than mine.
And they're recommending option 2.
Well, then if we go with option 2, I'm guessing we gotta understand what Matt wants to know, what's gonna happen with him. Then you're gonna have more seat to fill if Matt goes with that option 2 on the land use.
Land use is gonna be a problem. We get that. We understand that, and was kinda hoping I'd be off the board before we ever addressed that, but I'm not, so.
Are you guys keeping up with the land use
Yes, we
as
are.
of right now?
We,
Okay. So this has gotta be your busy time between
Yes.
septics and
it is.
But the septic and wells are environmental.
Yes. This is why I'm saying they're keeping up.
The land use is new construction, for
Right.
example.
Right. But I'm saying is they're keeping up what's going on right now.
I get it.
You know, I think one of the questions I would have for you, knowing that you guys, it is how difficult is it to find somebody that is interested long-term in both land use and environmental health or has those credentials? My understanding is that zoning is, you know, I mean, they're very different degree programs, very different knowledge bases.
It took us quite a few years just to get Matt.
Yeah, he's a unicorn.
So with option 1, the next time you're looking for another unicorn, if he, you know, it's tricky. I hear you. At least I'm hearing from Barb that she very much prefers option one, and Matt that he needs more information to know where he would see himself in option two. But I think finding this box in option one is tricky.
But, like Matt said, if we did go to hire someone that didn't have both, you would look at possibly getting them trained.
Of course. Anybody that comes in to
Has
the
to.
land use area is going to have to be trained to the Benton County way,
Exactly,
because we don't have zoning
that's
set up.
right.
And our subdivision ordinance, all that
And
stuff.
subdivision, floodplain, so there's a lot. But that person could learn.
I'm a bit worried that we're now within 60 days of, I don't know what people, if we're looking to find someone for public health, how much warning they need to give their employer. So, we have another meeting set up for Wednesday. Our hope was to be able to nail down a job description on Wednesday. Just so that you guys know what,
My personal opinion is, mine now, not these guys, you should figure out your job description from your public health person.
well, that depends on the structure.
Okay, that's just a public health.
But the administrator is gonna be different than a staff potentially.
Because in option two, that public health staff person is just doing the work. In option one, they're the administrator to the grants and doing the work. So it's two different job descriptions.
I mean, the administrator could have an MBA for all I care and learn the essentials about public health and environmental health in option two.
So we can't get a job description until we know the structure.
And then you also need to know where you're gonna house them too, correct?
Yeah, that was one of our other questions, are
I
we
think it was
able
on the agenda too.
Yes.
to, are we using this space or?
There's stuff that needs to start getting moved from Virginia Gay. So we need space.
And right now it's a cubicle, correct?
Yeah, but they have a
Basically.
storage, they're storing a lot of things. Her office is a cubicle, but like all of the equipment, I mean, is spread out throughout the hospital.
What's the equipment?
Refrigerators, emergency, some,
Emergency preparedness
Preparedness
stuff. I think Katie has a list.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she's.
Be nice to see what the list is, because are we talking garage space, shed space, are we talking office space? We know that the office space they have is basically a cubicle.
right. And
Correct.
that's not the concern, is the desk, it's the gear. But yes, I can find out from her how much space. I guess previously we had talked and you had said one of these classrooms, which Katie had said would be sufficient to store everything. But if we're not talking that classroom, then I can nail down the specifics of what square footage.
You know, are you talking something that's cold storage, or is it just needs to be climate controlled? I mean,
Right,
we kind of need to know what we're
Right.
talking.
there's a trailer that will be,
I think that's allowed to stay. Scott Hansen has space. I think Scott is allowing that to stay. I have not spoken with him, but that's been there and because they have all the space now, they took over whatever, right across from the fire station. They took over that garage.
Yeah, they're in a storage
So
shed.
Scott got all his trailers inside.
so So yes, so we also need to know what office space we're looking at. And if we need to budget for that.
I think we've got.
Again, if you
What
don't.
are you doing the next few weeks, Tracy?
Planning, right?
We'll make room for an office. Let's put it that way. Just need to see what needs to go into storage.
Okay.
What's your feelings, Gary?
I think we've got quite a bit of new ground that we're cutting.
Is there a code section where we can go into closed session to talk about employment?
Yes, there is, but we don't have it on.
I know it's not on this agenda today.
It
I
would
get
probably
that.
be that exempt for employee conditions.
Okay, and that's probably a rate question,
But yeah, that's the only one I can think of right now,
okay?
because you're not really
Because I
discussing
think
their
that's what we're gonna need to do,
personnel now.
so we can, openly discuss the what ifs and et cetera.
Because our environmental health's been working, don't you agree? Or do you disagree?
I think the work is being done. It is unclear, and I think it's been being done well. I think it's unclear to me the budget division with how much were environmental health and land use compared to the work. I don't have data to say if that, the way it's being divided with budgets is commensurate with the work. There's not been a time study to my knowledge that could say, yes,
I get that, but then again, it could be the opposite. They could be
Right,
spending more
absolutely.
time
Both.
on land use, not on environmental health.
And we are-
We can cut that budget back then.
we are 100% in agreement that it could go either way.
Yeah.
But as we're looking to come to you and say, we need more money, we need less money for the health department, it's murky when we don't really have full control over that time and budget. It's easier for us to look at a spreadsheet and say, how much money do we have, what work do we need done, than to say, okay, and this role is partly, it's just harder as a board to oversee
Half of a budget.
half of a budget.
Probably be
And to
similar
your-
to how we did Sarah's with the region, remember how she had to specifically put on her timesheet what was being utilized for this,
Yep.
that.
And to your point, maybe that is the case, and you can chip off $20,000 from environmental health, but then again, we come to you and say, we need another half-time person for public health. So maybe that is the case, but with environmental and public health in one their own area, that money could probably be reallocated to that other area, because I think that in the future, I do think we will probably need maybe an increase, because we're gonna be a lot more active than you guys have seen. Our new public health staff is gonna be doing a lot of public health.
See, myself personally, I don't foresee that. If you're not giving shots and everything,
That's not what.
Public health is a lot more than shots now, like, it's a lot more than shots.
I mean, so be that the opioid, outreach, mental health, community engagement with other community partners, emergency preparedness.
CPR, car seat checks.
There's a lot that can be done that has nothing to do with vaccinations.
Shots are clinics and pharmacies now. And Dollar Fresh and LaGrange Pharmacies, I've spoke with both of them. Dan is, of course, a partner of us, and Dollar Fresh pretty much had no idea we existed. and said she also has an MPH, the pharmacist there, and is more than happy and willing and wants our new director or staff member to come reach out of how we can partner with them, because she is all about public health, and obviously she's a pharmacist, so.
Healthy eating, active
Yeah.
lifestyles, there's a lot of public health, you know, some county health departments do weekly, you know, learn and walk sessions, partnering with the park and rec departments where, older people can come and, you know, learn about something, and, you know, there's a lot of public health that can be done that has nothing to do with vaccinations. Lead abatement, that's a
I can see how option 2, you're splitting environmental and public health / the common denominator there is health over here and land use over there. I can see that. That's not how we've functioned in the past. We've intermixed environmental and land use. And so, yeah. We have some big issues coming forth. I'd recommend we get a notice, get with Ray, find out when the 3 of us can sit down and talk,
Okay,
and then get it published, and then go into a
closed
session.
session.
Yeah.
They wanna know as soon as possible, correct?
They'd like to know before Wednesday.
Yeah,
I could probably still do one for tomorrow afternoon, after your regular meeting.
You knew this was full-time, didn't you?
Because you guys meet
4.
on Wednesday. So they would probably want your recommendation to them, so their meeting is worthy.
okay. We'll see if we can set it up for tomorrow afternoon then.
And then also too, I just want to clarify, who, when you guys send those Board of Health meeting agendas, because I know Gary wasn't on that one.
Okay,
So like normally I've never done those in the past.
Okay.
Sorry. So just to make sure, going forward, if you want to email all members, and if it's jointly, then that's where I think we got a little
Okay.
confused, so. Because you didn't go the other day, right?
Didn't know there was a
Yeah,
meeting.
So, I was kind of both.
okay, we all
Barb and I did look at
miscommunicated.
that too,
Yep.
yep. So, I was just defending you for not being there.
Thank you.
I thought there was.
Thank you.
I had it on my calendar that there was.
I know we talked about it in there,
Yeah.
because I went back and listened, but
It's
then it
just,
wasn't.
that's fine, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Water under that dam.
It is, it is, it's fine, and we had a good discussion, and,
Well,
I mean, like, we really sat for an hour and a half and
Yeah.
hashed this
But I
out.
know what you're saying too, our June 30th is coming pretty quickly.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so.
Thanks, you guys.